Hello everyone, my name is Ankit Jain and I welcome you all to my channel Take Journey with Ankit. This is the part 3 of our next interview preparation series where we will be discussing the frequently asked questions during your Salesforce interview. Before this series, I have already completed the series on LWC interview preparation as well as integration interview preparation as well. In case you folks didn't got a chance to go over it, make sure that you check out that too, where I have pulled the detailed questions on the LWC as well as on the integration. Now, in this series, we are discussing the questions which are specific to the Apex. I have already released the two parts, so make sure that you check out that two parts as well. So let's get started with the part 3. So again, in case you folks like to connect with me, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can connect with me on the LinkedIn as well. You can also join our Telegram channel where we will be discussing all the frequently asked questions and the solutions for any queries that you got in your Salesforce. So the first question that we will be discussing for today here is what is the difference between the DML statement as well as the database method. So again, we all know that in Salesforce we do have the two different options to perform the DML operation. One is the DML statement and second one here is the database method. Right. So now the question comes when to go for what kind of an approach. So the simple answer here will be you should go for the DML statement if you want any error that has been occurred whenever you are performing that operation, then immediately all the records should roll back, right? Immediately your flow should interrupt, then you should go for the DML statement. On contrast, we do have the database class method. In the database class method, if you want to allow the partial success, for example, you are performing the operations on 1000 records, but out of 1000 records, for example, there are few records which are bad records. So what you want, whatever the bad records which are there, that should be ignored and the good records should be progress. Then you will go for the database class method here. Database class method will give you one additional parameter with the help of which you can define whether the partial success should be allowed or not. So in case, let's take this as an example because in your interview, whenever you are explaining with example, you are always giving an impression to the interviewer. So for example, you do have an account list. In the account list, you do have the two different types of account. And here I am performing the insert operation. Let's say because of some validation rule or because of some any XYZ reason, my account operation has been failed, right? My insertion operation has been failed, right? What will happen? Both these records will rolled back. Now here again, I do performing the operations on the same account. Assume that one of the account is the bad account here, but I want the bad account should be ignored and the good amount, good record or the good account record should be progressed. Then what I will do here is I will use the database class method here with the database dot insert, and here I am using the account list on which I am need to go and perform the operation. And here the second parameter is very important where I have put the value as false. False means it will allow you the partial success of record. If you specify the false for the parameter and if a record fails, what will happen? The remainder of the DML operation will still succeed. So now what will happen if you put the second parameter as true? So here we have discussed what will happen if you put the second parameter as false, where the partial success is allowed. What if you have changed the second parameter as true? What will happen? You can expect this as a follow-up question, and I'm expecting you to answer me in the comment section. Very simple, right? But just give a shot. What will happen if you put the database dot insert second parameter as true? Now the next question, how many records can be inserted into the DML method? So into the DML method, we can uh, insert maximum 10,000 rows at a time. So for example, if I am performing the operations on the collection, while performing the operations on the collection, what I can do, at a time, I can go and insert maximum 10,000 records. Moreover, another key governor limit that you should keep in mind whenever you are working on the DML statement, in one single transaction, you cannot use more than 150 DML statements. Okay, so these are the two governor limits. In a collection, you can have maximum 10,000 records in a single transaction to perform the operation. And the second one here is 150 DML statements in a single transaction. Third question. Let's say this is more real-time scenario question that has been shared with one of the member with me on the LinkedIn. He have he has been asked this question in one of the interview, and the scenario here is the enterprise organization has 1,000 accounts. For each account, the business requires creating a related contact. Okay, so for the 1,000 account, the business wants to have the related contact. The developer have written this kind of a code, right? That the code that you can see on the screen, this kind of code has been written by the developer. Now, this code, it has been tested in the lower sandbox and it was working very fine, where they do have the less number of accounts. They don't have the 1,000 accounts, but assume that they do have around 50 or 70 accounts. And for those accounts, the code is working perfectly fine. But whenever they are running this code into the production where they do have the 1,000 accounts, now the code is failing. And you have been asked to identify the issue in the code, and also you have been asked to correct that issue. So again, I want you guys to take a pause, go over the code and try to identify the issue. Issue is very simple. In case you are doing the coding day by day, you already know what the issue here is, right? So if I have to show you the solution, so what the problem in the previous code was, we are performing the DML operations inside the loop, right? And that's the reason the code was failing. So if I am having the 1,000 accounts, right, my loop will run 1,000 times, and we cannot perform the DML statements, execute the DML statements 150 times in one single transaction. And that's what because of this, the particular block of code will fail. So how you can avoid that error? The answer is by using the collection. So what I am doing here is to correct this. I am whatever the account on which I need to perform the operation, right? I am iterating over those accounts and adding the records into the collection variable. Once the records are available into the collection variable, then I am performing the DML operations on that collection variable. By doing this, what I am doing here now, rather than performing the DML operations into the loop, this time I am performing the single DML operations to insert the 1,000 record. So this type of scenario based questions definitely you can expect in your interviews. There are a few more scenario based questions that I have covered in this deck. So let's go over it. Now, the another question here is, how could you refactor the below code? So what they are doing in this code, try to understand this. For So they are making the query on the account object. Now inside the loop, they are making another query to get the count of those events. And once the count of event is there, again inside the loop, they are performing the DML operation. So can you please help me to identify what are the two wrong things that they are doing in this code? So they are doing the two wrong things. One is they are performing the query inside the loop. And another wrong thing that they are doing here is they are performing the DML operations inside the loop, right? Again, this is a more real-time question that you can definitely expect in your interviews. In case you are having the 3 to 4 year of experience in the Salesforce and you are going for the interview, you can definitely expect this type of question where they can ask you to correct this type of a code or ask you to write this kind of a code, right? So how you can go and correct this code now? Because there are two wrong things that we are doing. So to correct this code, first thing that we have to do here is we have to make sure that we are not using the SOQL inside the loops. And the second one here is we are not using the DMS statements inside the loop. Again, take a pause, try to solve by yourself. In case you are struggling, you can definitely fast forward and check out the solution as well. So this is how the solution will look like. So here you can see what I am doing. Let's try to read from here. First, what I am doing here is, as you can see here, I am making the query on the account, right? After I make the query on the account, what I have done, I have put all the accounts into the map. So here you can see the first line, I am making the queries on the account, and on the account, I am having the map. So what we'll have in this map, the ID will be the account ID, and here I do have the complete account record. Now, as I do have the account map, I can directly make the query on the event object. The recommended way is always to go for the for SOQL loop. We already discussed that in the last session, right? So here I am using the for SOQL loop. And after using the for SOQL loop, whatever the results that I am getting, I am adding all those events into the list collection, into the set collection, right? So for those accounts, whatever the events are available, these events are available now into this thread collection, right? Now, the next thing that I am doing here is, as I have to perform the count operation here, I prefer to go for the aggregate queries. In the aggregate queries, what again, I am not making the queries on all the events. I am making the queries only on the events which are related to the accounts that we do have, right? So here I am making the queries on the events, and here I am grouping my result based on the account ID. What ID? It is the special field available on the event object which refers the account ID here. So here what I am doing, I am grouping it based on the account ID. And once that has been done, again, I am using another map collection. And in that map collection, I am adding the account ID and followed by the count of the event record. So this time my map have two things. One is the account ID. So aggregate result, whenever we have to get the value from the aggregate result, we use the dot get, and it always returns the object. And as it returns the object, you can definitely do the type conversion as well, right? That's what we are doing using the string dot value of. Now here also what I am putting here is the count. For the count, I have put the alias here, and that alias I am using and storing that count as well. Now I do have the two things. One is the ID and second is the count. Now the next thing that I am doing here is, because whatever the count that I do have, I have to update that count on the account object. So again, I am iterating over all the accounts for which we do have the events. Right now, the next thing here is, here I am checking that if the description is not equal to whatever the value that we do have, then I am populating the description here and also adding all the accounts into the collection, because at the description only I have to go and update the count. So first I am checking that if the count is not matching, then and then only I should go and add into that into my collection. So here I am populating the description with that count, and in the end I am performing the update operation. To try to code this example, even though you have to type line by line, that's perfectly fine. But definitely you will learn multiple things whenever you go over this code and try to do it by yourself. Okay, very simple operation. Let me do a quick revision for again what we are doing. So I am making the queries on the events, storing the events into the set. After that, I am making the aggregate query, storing the result into a map where the key is the account ID and the value is the count of the event. After that, again, I am making the query on the account to iterate over all the accounts to update the description. And for whatever the accounts I need to update the description, I am storing that account into the collection variable. And in the end, I am performing the DML operation. So here you can see that I am using how many queries? One, two, three, four queries, and only one DML operation, right? To do my job. Definitely, there will be another solution for this. You can always think of, but make sure that you are following the basic rules whenever you are implementing the code inside the Apex. Now, this is what I want you guys to try it out and let me know the solution in the comment section. How you can bulkify this code. What they are doing in this code, they are iterating over the list of accounts, and here for each account that they do have, they are iterating over the contact. What I want you guys to do here is tell me how you can avoid this looping of contacts inside this for loop. How you can do that. Okay, give a thought process and make sure that the solution that you are putting, you are not writing down the SOQL query inside the loop. Put the solution in the comment section. I will definitely go over it and let you know whether it is correct or wrong, right? And if you want, I will also show you the solution for this in the next video as well. Now, the next question, what is SOQL for loop? In the last session, we already talked in brief about this, where we discussed the advantages of SOQL for loop. But let's go over it one more time because it is very important question. SOQL for loop are the SOQL statements that can be used inline along with the for loop. So The traditional way of writing down the for loop here is first you go and make the query, store the result into the collection, and then you iterate over the collection. But thanks to the for SOQL loop, what you can do here is you can write down the you can process the query and make the query at the same time. So the syntax looks something like this. So here you do have the for count ACC, and whatever the query that you have to write, you will write it down here. The advantage that you will get with the for SOQL loop here is you can avoid the limit on heap size. And that is the one of the major reason that Salesforce do recommend that you should always go for the SOQL for loop so that you can avoid the limit on heap size. Your heap memory management will automatically be taken care by the Salesforce, right? Whenever you are using the for SOQL loop. How it has been taken care? Salesforce SOQL for loop can process the record in the batches of 200. Even though from here you are getting, let's say, 10,000 record, but whenever you are using the SOQL for loop, it always processes the records in the batch of 200, so that at a time only 200 records will be in the memory, and due to which your heap memory will be managed effectively. The next question, which is again one of the favorite question, what is the wrapper class in Salesforce? I have seen many developers do struggle with the wrapper class, right? So let's try to understand this wrapper class here. As the name suggests, wrapper class in Salesforce allow the developers to combine the different data type and use them for the specific purpose. So what is the reason we go and create the wrapper class? Let's try to understand this with one analogy. For example, let's say I have on my UI, I have to display the account, contact, case related information, right? Or let's say I do have to display the information of temperature, which is not part of standard object but a custom object. I need to go and display the weather details on my UI. So all these details, what I am doing, I'm calculating in one class. But how I can go and club all these details together and send it back to UI? Answer to this is wrapper class. So wrapper class is something which will allow you to define the different data types. Here you can see that this is my wrapper class, and here I can have the different variables of different data types. It can be a primitive, it can be a collection variable, it can be an S object, it can be a collection of S object. It's completely up to you how you want to go and define the wrapper. Once you have defined the wrapper, you can use that wrapper in your main class to populate the data. And once all this data has been populated, you can simply return that wrapper. Okay. Again, wrapper class can also be defined as an inner class as well. Wrapper class can also be defined as an separate class as well. It's not mandatory that wrapper class will always be an inner class. That's also one of the assumptions that I have seen people do have, right? They always keep the wrapper class as the inner class. No, you can keep the wrapper class as the separate class as well, and your primary class can be separated as well. So if anyone asks you what is wrapper class, two or three important terms that you can highlight. It is used to combine the different data types for the specific purpose. So the example that I have given here, the specific purpose was you have to go and display the data. Sometimes the purpose can be you have to send this accumulated data using the API as well. So for the different purposes, what you are doing, you are accumulating this data, right? Another point that you can highlight here is whenever we have to represent the data in the form of complex data structure, then also we can go for the wrapper class in Salesforce. I have already put one video uh, on my LWC Bootcamp. If you check out the day 48 video, it was on the wrapper class, how you can use the wrapper class and collect the data and send the data back to the UI. Definitely go over that video. Most of the concepts related to the wrapper class will definitely get cleared in that example. Next one, how you can debug and troubleshoot the errors in Apex, right? One of the favorite question again, because in the Apex, I have seen many people do find very challenge to troubleshoot the errors as well. So what are the different options provided by the Apex to do the troubleshooting? Again, people do. I have seen that people keep limited themselves till system.debug. Again, I'm not saying that system.debug is not the correct answer, but that is not the only option to debug the Apex. Right? You can go over the complete debug logs. You can use the debuggers as well. So Salesforce do offer the debuggers as well to debugging or troubleshooting the error. So basically, there are two different types of debuggers that we do have in Salesforce, right? One is the replay debugger, and second one here is the interactive debugger. Both these debuggers can work on the VS Code, right? So first, let's go and talk about what is replay debugger. Replay debugger, basically, it is, as the name says, it is used to replay the debug log so that you can do the live debugging of the code that has been executed. Again, I'm repeating, as the name says, replay debugger, it is used to replay the debug logs so that you can do the live debugging of the issues that you have encountered. The advantage with the replay debugger here is you will get a more real-time information about the variables that you are using in your code, right? You can add the breakpoints as well as the checkpoints in your code as well, and put the logical breakpoints and the checkpoints to fetch the details. Another good part about the replay debugger, it's a free tool. You do not have to pay a single penny to use the replay debugger. Still, I have seen many people are not using the replay debugger as effectively as they can to do the troubleshooting. Next one here is the interactive debugger. Again, interactive debugger, it's a paid tool. It's not a free tool, right? And this tool is specific for the ISVs whenever they have to perform the debugging. So Apex Interactive Debugger allow to debug the Apex code and the Scratch logs in real time, right? In the real time, if you have to perform the debugging in the VS Code, then you will go for the interactive debugger. In the case of replay debugger, what we are doing, we are replaying the debug logs. We are not doing the live debugging, but here we are doing the live debugging. It comes with the features for independent software partners. As I said, it is more effective for the ISVs, right? So that who can install this as a managed package. And this interactive debugger, it's a paid product. It's not a free product. So these are the different options. And actually, all these things should be covered if anyone has asked you how you can go and debug an Apex class rather than only saying by putting the system.debug statements and checking the values. Definitely that is one of the way, but replay debugger and the interactive debugger are also the option. Now, next question, what is breakpoint and what is checkpoint? Very important because it's a fine line difference whenever you are using the Apex replay debugger, right? So one of the step here is you have to go and add the breakpoint or checkpoint. So when you should go for the breakpoints and the checkpoint? Let's try to understand this. Breakpoint, when debugging, a breakpoint is something which will instruct the program to pause at the specific line so that developers can inspect the variable values in time. So for example, at the real time during debugging, you have to go and check the values. What you will do, you will put the logical breakpoint, and at that breakpoint, whatever the values are available, you can check that value. At whatever the line you have put the breakpoint, right? The code will immediately pause at that specific line number. Another key point about the breakpoint here is you can add as many breakpoints as needed. There is no such limitation. You can go and add as many breakpoints. If you guys have done the debug with the LWC, it's more exactly the same. Like in the LWC, we add the breakpoint. Similarly, here also we add the breakpoint. Checkpoint is something which is very specific to the Apex, right? What is checkpoint? So understand the checkpoint, we have to understand the breakpoint. One more point about the breakpoint, right? So breakpoint, it will not provide the much richer information. For example, let's say you do have one collection and in that collection you do have the thousands of records. You cannot see all these thousands of records if you only have the checkpoint, right? So to overcome that, we do have the concept of checkpoint. Checkpoint is a special feature for debugging the Apex code that provides more information. How it can provide the more information? By capturing the heap dumps. So using this, what we are doing, we are capturing the heap dump. And from that dump, we can go and fetch as much information. In an whenever you are debugging at a time, you can only add maximum 5 checkpoints. You cannot add more than 5 checkpoints at a time. Right? So at the checkpoint that you are adding, whatever the values which are available in the dump, you can definitely refer those values here. So compared to the breakpoint, checkpoints provide much more richer information for all the local variables, static variables, uh, triggers, as well as the context variable. So compared to the breakpoint, checkpoint have more richer information, but the limitation here is you can maximum have 5 checkpoints. Now, this question can also be asked if you told that you know the Apex Replay debugger. So what are the steps that needs to be followed whenever you have to use the Apex Replay debugger? The first step that you have to do here is you will go and add either the breakpoint or the checkpoint. Adding the breakpoint is very simple. You have to double click on the line. To add the checkpoint, what you have to do, you have to execute this command sfds update checkpoints in the org. Next one here is once you have added the breakpoints and the checkpoints, then you can turn on the Apex debug log for replay debugger. By doing the Control Shift P, you can execute this command. After that, in the org, you can go and reproduce the issue. Why you are reproducing the issue? Because you have to generate the log. That's why here you go and reproduce that issue. Once the issue is reproduced, then using this command sfdx apex debug log, you can go and fetch that debug log. And the next thing that you can do here is you can click the log that you want to replace. So when you go and hit this command, you will get the list of log files. Out of that log file, which log file you want to replay, you can replay that log file. You can select that log file. And once the file has been selected, what you have to do here is you have to hit another command sfdx launch apex replay debugger with the current file. I know the steps are a bit tricky if you have not used the apex replay debugger because you have to remember all these different commands. But in case you are using the apex replay debugger in your day-to-day work, this will be a everyday process that you are following. Again, if you are completely new to the Apex Replay debugger and you want me to create the video on that, again, do let me know in the comment section. So the next video I will put on the Apex Replay debugger only, right? So that you will get a fair idea how you can debug an Apex class. Another question that we can discuss here is what are the different types of exceptions which are available in the Salesforce? Again, the list here is quite big. No one is expecting you to answer all the different types of question. This question has been asked, but the expectation here is you guys should know the frequently occurred exceptions in the Apex. Right? So exceptions are nothing but an unexpected event that has been occurred whenever your transaction is executing. That unexpected event can be either your validation rule is failing, or the required field is missing, or the code you have not done the code properly. There can be n number of reasons for having the unexpected event. So I have put the few frequently type of exceptions that we encountered in our day-to-day job. The first one here is the DML exception. These exceptions will occur whenever a DML operation is failed. For example, in case there is any problem with the DML operation, in case the required field is missing, in case the mixed DML error is happening, or in case you are passing some invalid data. Because of any n number of reasons, if your DML operation is failing, then the system will throw the DML exception. Next one here is the null pointer exception. Again, whenever we go and put any variable into the Apex code, the default value of that variable is always null. Right? In case you have not instantiated that variable with any other value and you are directly using that variable, then you will get the null pointer exception. Third one here is the query exception. This query exception will come up whenever you do have anything wrong in your SOQL queries. For example, you are fetching the records in you are fetching the multiple SOQL records and storing and trying to save that records into the one single variable. right? Or you are not fetching any record using the SOQL and try to save that variable, try to save that record in the SOQL variable. For this kind of a reasons, we do get the query exception. The next exception, this is very special because many times if you are not doing the good coding, definitely you will come across with this exception, that is the limit exception. This exception will occur whenever you have hit the governor limit. For example, you are putting the query inside the loop, you are putting the DML operations inside the loop, right? You have not written the code with the best practices. It's high possibility that you will hit this limit exception. Again, the key part about the limit exception here is that is this is the hard limit. That means you cannot reach out to the Salesforce support team to increase that limit. So in Salesforce, we do have the two types of limit. One is the hard limit and second one is the soft limit. Hard limit is something where the Salesforce support also cannot help you. Soft limits are something where you can reach out to the Salesforce support team and based on your use case, they can help you to provide some additional limit. This limit exception, it's a hard limit. And whenever the limit exceptions occurred, your program will immediately fail. There is no way you can catch this exception as well. Now, I have put few scenarios that I want you to try to answer. Okay, so every time you can take a pause, try to answer by yourself. And if you think that the answer is correct, then you can move forward and check out that solution. So the first question here will be which exceptions will occur here and why that exception will occur. So if I go and execute this line, the exceptions that will occur here is the S-object exception. Why the S-object exception is happening? Because here you can see that what I am doing, I am using the total inventory field. But I am not making the query on that field. If I am not selecting that field in our query and directly using that field, then I will get the S-object exception. To avoid that, what we have to do? We have to also fetch the total inventory field from the merchandise object. Next question. Which exception will occur here and why? Again, kind of an exception that will occur here is the null pointer exception. And why the null pointer exception is happening? Because here you can see that I have defined the S variable, but I have not instantiated that variable and directly performing the operation. Right? And for that reason, here I am having the null pointer exception. Now, there are few things that I want you guys to attempt and post your answer in the comment box. So I have put a code snippet here. What you have to tell me here is which exception will occur whenever we are executing this block of a code and the reason for that. The first one here is I am trying to insert the contact, but let's say my contact creation is failing. You have to tell me why it is failing and what exception will occur and how you can avoid that exception. Again, another code snippet that I do have is this. Again, when I'm executing this code, either I'm getting the 0 records or I'm getting the 100 records, my code is failing. Again, you have to try to attempt why this code is failing and which exception will occur and how I can avoid that exception as well. So your answer must include 3 points: the exception name, the reason of an exception, and how you can avoid that exception as well. Okay, please try to attempt all the questions that I am asking. The intent here to ask is you should also do your own homework whenever you are preparing for the interview. This preparation will definitely help you to clear the interview and get a job in your dream company as well. That's all I do have, folks, for this session. I hope you folks found it helpful. Do let me know in case you do have any comments, any thoughts to share. Thank you for this time.